Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we're diving into something absolutely incredible that has the entire music industry talking, and that represents one of the most significant validations of Jungkook's talent and artistry from a legendary music producer. We're talking about Grammy-winning producer Diplo making some absolutely stunning statements about BTS's upcoming ARIRANG album, and specifically about working with Jungkook, calling this collaboration the pinnacle of his 30-year career in the music industry. And when someone who has worked with literally every major artist you can think of, from Madonna to Beyoncé to Justin Bieber, says that working on this project represents the peak of their entire career, that is not just casual praise, that is a genuinely historic statement that tells us something profound about the quality of what's coming and about Jungkook's abilities as an artist. So make sure you're subscribed, because we're going to break down everything Diplo said, what it means for ARIRANG, what it tells us about Jungkook's role in this album, and why this represents such a major moment for K-pop's recognition in the global music industry. Hit that like button, drop a comment telling me how excited you are for ARIRANG, and let's get into this incredible story. Let me start by giving you the complete context of Diplo's involvement with ARIRANG and his relationship with Jungkook, because understanding the history makes these recent statements even more meaningful. Diplo, whose real name is Thomas Wesley Pence, is not just any producer, he's a genuine legend in the music industry with a 30-year career that includes multiple Grammy wins, countless platinum records, and collaborations with virtually every major artist across multiple genres. He's worked with Madonna, Beyoncé, Justin Bieber, Ariana Grande, Usher, Snoop Dogg, Mae, and the list literally goes on and on. He's also the founder of Major Lazer, a member of supergroup LSD with Sia and Labyrinth, and he's produced some of the biggest hits of the last 2 decades. So when someone with that kind of resume and that level of experience in the music industry makes bold statements about a project, the entire industry pays attention, because they know it's coming from someone who has seen and done everything in music. Now, Diplo's connection to BTS and specifically to Jungkook actually goes back to Jungkook's solo album Golden, which was released in November 2023. Diplo produced a track on Golden called Please Don't Change featuring DJ Snake, which is also known as Close to You, and that collaboration was really well received and showed that there was genuine creative chemistry between Diplo and Jungkook. So when BTS started working on ARIRANG, their 5th studio album and their big comeback project after the members completed their military service, it made sense that they would want to work with Diplo again, but nobody expected the scope of his involvement or the level of his enthusiasm for the project. In early February 2026, Diplo gave an interview to TMZ where he made some absolutely stunning statements about ARIRANG that immediately went viral. He said, and I'm quoting directly here, "ARIRANG will be the greatest album in history. Not one of the greatest, not potentially great, but the greatest album in history." That is an incredibly bold statement from someone who has literally been part of making some of the most successful and critically acclaimed albums of the modern era. He also said that the album will shock the world, that it's the craziest album ever released, and here's the part that's particularly relevant to our topic today, he called working on ARIRANG the biggest moment in my 30-year music life. Let me repeat that because it's so significant. A producer who has spent 3 decades working with the absolute biggest names in music, who has won Grammys, who has produced #1 hits across the globe, says that this BTS project represents the biggest moment of his entire career. But it gets even better, because Diplo didn't just praise the album in general, he specifically talked about Jungkook's contribution and abilities. In that same TMZ interview, when asked about working with Jungkook, Diplo said, "Jungkook doesn't need autotune. He has a perfect voice." Now, for those who might not fully understand what a significant statement this is from a technical and industry perspective, let me explain. In modern music production, especially in pop and hip-hop, autotune and vocal processing have become absolutely standard. It's not even necessarily about correcting pitch problems, it's often used as a creative effect or just to add a certain polish to vocals. The vast majority of songs you hear on the radio, even by artists known for their vocal abilities, use some level of autotune or pitch correction in the production process. For a producer to say that an artist doesn't need autotune isn't just saying they can sing, it's saying their pitch is so perfect, their vocal control is so complete, and their natural voice is so good that they can record completely clean and it will be studio quality without any correction. That is extremely rare, and it's the kind of compliment that veteran producers very rarely give. What makes Diplo's statements even more interesting is when you look at them in the context of his entire career and the artists he's worked with. This is someone who has been in the studio with Beyoncé, who is widely considered one of the greatest vocalists of all time. He's worked with Ariana Grande, who has an incredible vocal range. He's worked with Madonna, an absolute icon. And yet, when talking about ARIRANG and Jungkook, he uses language that suggests this is something special even beyond those collaborations. When a producer with that kind of experience says something represents the pinnacle of their career, it tells us that there's something genuinely unique and exceptional happening with this project. Let's talk about what we know about Diplo's actual contribution to ARIRANG, because this helps us understand why he's so invested in and excited about the album. On March 4, 2026, Diplo posted on his Instagram a photo with Jungkook and RM from the ARIRANG recording sessions, and in the caption, he wrote, "Army please be nice. I made 5 of these," revealing that he produced 5 tracks on the album. 5 tracks is a substantial contribution to a 14-track album. It means he's responsible for more than a third of the album's production. The 5 tracks he produced are reportedly Body to Body, FYA, One More Night, Like Animals, and Into the Sun, which is apparently the closing track of the album. That last detail is particularly significant because the closing track of an album is often considered one of the most important positions. It's the last impression the album leaves, and the fact that BTS entrusted that position to a Diplo-produced track shows how much confidence they have in his work. What's really interesting about Diplo's involvement is that it represents this perfect intersection of Western production expertise and K-pop artistry. Diplo brings this incredible knowledge of global pop trends, this ability to create hits that work across different markets and different radio formats, and this experimental approach that has made him successful across multiple genres from EDM to hip-hop to pop. BTS brings their unique musical identity, their incredible performance ability, their devoted fanbase, and in Jungkook's case specifically, this apparently perfect vocal ability that Diplo was so impressed by. When you combine those elements, you get the potential for something really special that can appeal to both the existing massive BTS fanbase and also to general pop audiences who might not be as familiar with K-pop. Now, let's think about what it means for Diplo to call this the pinnacle of his 30-year career. A pinnacle, by definition, is the highest point, the peak, the ultimate achievement. For someone who has been making music professionally since the mid-1990s, who has seen the industry transform multiple times, who has been part of some of the biggest musical moments of the streaming era, to say that this BTS album represents his career peak is making a statement about artistic ambition and achievement that goes way beyond just commercial success. Diplo has already had massive commercial successes, he's already won awards, he's already worked with legends. So when he talks about ARIRANG being his pinnacle, he's talking about something else. He's talking about the quality of the music, the creative process, the artistic vision, and possibly the cultural impact he believes this album will have. There's also something really significant about the timing of these statements. ARIRANG is set to be released on March 20, 2026, which is just days away from when these statements were made. This is BTS's comeback album after all 7 members completed their military service. It's been highly anticipated for literally years, the expectations are absolutely massive, and Diplo is not only meeting those expectations with his statements, he's actually raising them even higher by making these bold claims about the album being potentially the greatest in history. That takes a lot of confidence, and it suggests that he genuinely believes in the quality of what they've created together. Let's also consider what this means specifically for Jungkook and his role in ARIRANG. While we don't have complete details about every track and every member's contribution yet, we know that Jungkook is involved in at least 4 tracks on the album, and given that Diplo produced 5 tracks and specifically praised Jungkook's vocals, there's definitely overlap in their work. The song Hooligan, which is reportedly track number 7 on ARIRANG, is one that Jungkook is definitely involved in, and there are likely others. The fact that Diplo, who has now worked with Jungkook on both Golden and ARIRANG, specifically called out his voice as perfect and not needing autotune tells us that Jungkook's vocal contribution to these tracks is substantial and that Diplo was genuinely impressed by what he heard in the studio. What I find particularly fascinating is how Diplo's praise fits into the broader pattern of Western industry professionals recognizing and validating Jungkook's talent. We've seen choreographers praise his dance ability, we've seen vocal coaches analyze his technique, we've seen other producers and musicians talk about his work ethic and musicality, and now we have one of the most successful producers in modern music history saying he has a perfect voice. This kind of recognition from people who are not just fans but are actual industry professionals with decades of experience is incredibly meaningful because it confirms what ARMY has known for years but helps communicate it to a broader audience. There's also an interesting element to Diplo's Instagram caption where he asked ARMY to please be nice about the tracks he made. This shows that he's aware of how dedicated and sometimes particular BTS's fanbase can be, and he clearly wants his contribution to be well received. The fact that he's somewhat nervous about ARMY's reaction despite being a legendary producer who has faced every kind of audience shows that he takes this collaboration seriously and that he understands the stakes. It's also kind of endearing and shows that he respects the BTS fandom and wants to make music that they'll love, not just music that will chart well or win awards. Looking at the bigger picture, Diplo's statements about ARIRANG and Jungkook represent something really significant for K-pop's position in the global music industry. For years, K-pop has been working to gain recognition and respect from Western music industry gatekeepers, and while BTS has definitely broken through many barriers, there's still sometimes this sense that K-pop is viewed as somewhat separate from mainstream Western music. But when you have someone like Diplo, who is absolutely part of the Western music establishment, not just collaborating with K-pop artists but calling that collaboration the pinnacle of his career, it's a form of validation that helps break down those remaining barriers. It says that K-pop artists, and specifically BTS and Jungkook, are not just successful within their genre but are creating music that even the most experienced Western producers view as exceptional. It's also worth noting that Diplo's praise comes at a really interesting time in Jungkook's career. Jungkook released his solo album Golden in 2023, which was extremely successful commercially and critically. He's established himself as a successful solo artist beyond just being a member of BTS. He's collaborated with Western artists, he's charted globally with his solo work, and he's built this reputation as one of the most talented all-around performers in K-pop. And now, as he's coming back with BTS for ARIRANG, he has this incredible validation from Diplo about his vocal ability specifically. This sets up ARIRANG to potentially be a moment where Jungkook's individual talents within the group context get even more recognition. So guys, that's the complete story of Diplo calling his work on ARIRANG and with Jungkook the pinnacle of his 30-year career. We have a Grammy-winning producer who has literally worked with everyone from Madonna to Beyoncé saying that this BTS album represents the highest point of his entire career. We have him specifically praising Jungkook's voice as perfect and not needing autotune, which is an extremely rare compliment from a producer at that level. We have him producing 5 tracks on ARIRANG, including the closing track, which shows how much BTS trusts and values his contribution. And we have him making bold predictions that this album will shock the world and potentially be the greatest album in history. These are not casual statements, these are meaningful declarations from someone who has been at the highest levels of the music industry for 3 decades and who clearly believes that something special is happening with this project. With ARIRANG dropping on March 20th, we're just days away from finding out if Diplo's bold predictions come true, but based on his track record and his genuine enthusiasm, I think we're all in for something absolutely incredible. What do you think about Diplo's statements? Do you believe ARIRANG will live up to the hype? How excited are you to hear Jungkook's vocals on the Diplo-produced tracks? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into Diplo's praise for ARIRANG and Jungkook, please give this video a massive thumbs up, share it with everyone who's excited for BTS's comeback, subscribe if you haven't already because we'll be covering everything about ARIRANG when it drops, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any updates. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.